Hi everyone, it's Natalie here. After a long day at work, um, um, long day where it was really hard to just to stay fully present with the kids. I tell you what, this is a middle school, so even though the kids that I'm looking after and attending to are very easy in many ways, despite their special needs. I have to admit, being around middle school kids right at this moment is most unpleasant. And I'm in one of the best possible case scenarios where I'm in a really well-funded school district, um, which, as I say that, may be making it worse. I can't help but wonder. I mean, I have heard a few teachers say things like, this is the worst behavior they've ever had from the kids. I've stepped in and broken up multiple fights that had nothing to do with the special needs kids that I'm involved with. I'll just say that. It's not good. I wonder how much of it is to do with leadership being so familiarly on that level that the kids are on. So if they see adults in high positions able to behave more or less the same way that they are and get away with it, why would they need to mature, and why would they need to choose a different tactic? Yeah, and I doubt there's a lot of that that's actually even conscious, but it does have me wondering. But that's not why I'm here today. I just had a little moment there of like, I wonder if that's what's going on. It is exhausting to be around them. Not so much the special needs kids, although a couple of them they're having a moment. They've been having a moment of late, but it's really the neuronormative population that's really in an interesting place right at about now. I think it's always a hard age group to be with for so many reasons, but at the moment it's more than usual. Anyway, thanks for indulging that for a few minutes. The reason I'm here, so I did my first video, earlier, like yesterday, I guess, about the Empress and getting the Empress on Saturday, and then finding out, thinking about and reflecting about the archetypal difference between the Empress and the High Priestess, and which I think is a fascinating it's fascinating. The idea that as a woman, we're embodying both of them at once. I really believe that. I mean, they are both major female archetypes that we all embody. And I have, after reflection, and after a little thing that happened earlier, begun to consider another side to my contemplation yesterday. So this morning, I went to do first operation because I realized I didn't get to it all weekend, and I'd really missed having that as part of my practice. So I pulled out my Marielle deck and began shuffling, because I usually will just, take it through a couple of overhands, just to get my mind in the game, so to speak. And then I will fish through and find a significator. Well, before I was even doing that, I had made my decision that I wanted to use the High Priestess as my significator, because that is a thing, like where you like any female sitter that comes in is going to be a High Priestess, and any male sitter will be the magician, right? So I wanted to try that. because I've tried a couple of other different iterations. And I was just curious, like, what would happen if I chose. I've never done that one. And I had also, just been having this contemplation, blah, blah, blah. So I picked up the deck and I began my shuffle. Lo and behold, I don't think I'd had more than 2 shuffles, and the deck spit out the Empress at me. Now, I have worked with this deck daily since it came into my hands. Daily. I don't think, I carry it around with me everywhere. I've been known to sleep with it under my pillow. At this point, I'm really getting deep into reading complex spreads and doing, a lot of different things with this deck because of the level of depth and comfort that I've begun to feel with it. When it spits out a card, and it's very rare that this particular deck does that. It's very often the case that other decks I have will toss a card out at me. The thought of ants in my office, even though they seem to be going away and they're not around, it makes me itch all over my body right now. Just throwing that out there. So you're going to see me scratch a little. Anyway. For this deck to spit a card out at me, it has to be significant. So when this one came flying out of the deck at me, I thought, whoa, it just felt very clearly like, hey, you didn't ask my opinion in this little contemplation you're having about the Empress. And this deck has a really beautiful perspective on the Empress, and I feel like I want to pull out my guidebook, which is becoming more and more battered and bashed around as I keep it in this is now my Marielle travel case. So let's see. And, it was so fresh. Like, I've literally never drawn from this particular deck. I mean, I don't think I've ever had the Empress come up, as I said yesterday, but it's rare that I even get it. I mean, it hasn't even come up in this deck, and almost every card at this point has become part of a spread or a reading with the Marielle. Judgment has not. Judgment, I think, is my last remaining one to meet. The rest have made a surfaced. I love this. The Empress isn't just the mother to a single child. She is the symbol of the mother of everything, the abundance and fertility of creation, and she carries all things across the void of creation and into the world of manifestation. And I love that. What else was there that I circled? The 2 and the 3, HP and the Empress, are 2 aspects of the mother goddess, one dark and remote, one creative and loving. If you equate these 2 mothers strictly to the tree of life, you will see that they top the 2 contrasting pillars of mercy and severity. These 2 women goddesses, along with the magician and perhaps the fool, form the supernal triad on the tree of life. And if I consider them as 2 sides of the same coin, right, it changes things. Also, to hear a phrase like, the Empress isn't just the mother to a single child. She is a symbol of the mother of everything, the abundance and fertility of creation, and she carries all things across the void of creation and into the world of manifestation. So as I read that, and I got that this morning, that really shifted my perspective really drastically. Something that I don't talk much about. Actually, I don't think I've ever said it here before. And it may as well. I mean, it's no reason not to. And I guess when things come up around the cards, it's the perfect opportunity. I'm 43 and I don't have any kids. And it isn't that I didn't try. It isn't that I didn't want children. At a certain point, I was hell-bent on having kids. And I mentioned in the first video that, the risk of attempting, really, trying so hard to find the way to embody this manifestation of goddess, or of archetype, really cost me a lot. Where do I want to go with this? Suffice it to say that what I don't think I recognized as a younger woman, if we're thinking of these women as two sides of the same coin, right? In this kind of way. And on some level, my existence needed to bifurcate them. Couldn't see them as like being capable of coexistence, right? So when I would manifest the Empress, hiding in the background was always the High Priestess. But because I was allowing that to happen instead of saying yes and, right? These are who I am. They are both within me. Well, if one is in shadow, there's always going to be an issue, right? There's always going to be some kind of an issue. So, at a certain point, coming back to the Empress in particular, we'll let the High Priestess take a rest. I would say in recent years, in being an unchilded woman, and at a certain point realizing that has become a choice now, even though it didn't start out as a choice, I find, and have said this for a while, and I mentioned it to somebody the other night, I think it might have been at the art opening, that when I meet people anymore, it's rare that I would meet anyone who on some level didn't feel already as though they're already my child. As in who out there isn't my child, really, deeply, on when you're very in touch with that maternal it's profound. That compassion and that love. And I don't have it for a child that I've given birth to. And yet, at some point, I gave into that. I allowed it through anyway, without the process of physically giving birth to a baby. In order for that to be allowed to manifest itself. And when I did that, I stopped suffering from not being the embodiment of what I believed the Empress to be, if that makes any sense. And the reason I chose to examine it in the first place is because, there was, it was a perpetual issue where, when we have like unresolved psychological business, right? That's often really deep. It's really deep. It's in our family patterns, in our family of origin, our relationships with the people we've loved the most in our lives. So our parents, our moms and dads, and sibling relationships. It's all of that. When it's really unresolved and unconscious, it can manifest in relationship with partners and so on in ways that are so damaging that if you're not really careful, it can become life-threatening. And it did at one point. I don't know why my camera is getting so bright. The east is behind me, not the west. And in this room, there is no real extra light coming through those blinds. This is very interesting. At any rate, what began to happen was, the sun is setting. It's 7:12 p.m. It's getting darker, so I don't really know what's happening here. But anyway, what began to happen was that in attracting partners that on some level, were prone to becoming abusive, I realized at a certain point they were also able to use having kids, giving birth, all of that as a way of dangling a carrot in front of me. I don't have to fully commit. I can keep the power balance in my favor by not letting her have hers. If I use this, the idea of marriage and family as a bargaining chip, basically. And I realized at a certain point in my early to mid 30s that if I didn't just grieve the possibility of not having kids, because I knew I did not want to have to do that without a partner. And I also wanted to do everything possible in the event of having children to make sure that I could set up a reasonable environment for being able to raise them. And that involved like knowing myself well enough to know I would really need the help of a partner to raise a child, and I wasn't willing to do it by myself. And so really, in order to even find a partner and even have the hope of having a child and fully realizing and embodying this archetype, what I would have to do is heal that wound around those old patterns with family and early relationships and so forth, and unmet needs, and years and years of unmet needs, right? This ties in back with all of the work that I've done with anger. And then I would also have to grieve not being a mom, not being a mother, and allow this archetype on some level to have its own death within me. And I did. And the process probably took, from start to finish, probably 4 or 5 years in total before it was fully through, like to the point where I know, where now it's not, it can't be a source of pain or triggering anymore. But at a certain point, even though I had been through the biggest part of it, it could still come up as a trigger. Mostly where belonging and feeling like I belonged or could get along with other people in the Midwest, away from a city, like in a suburb, like what do? You go to try and find people your own age, and you don't have kids, so they don't know how to engage you, even if you're happy to engage them and engage their families and their children and so on. Anyway, this is going on a lot longer than I expected. But healing that wound was profound. It was really profound. And I'm grateful that I did. And it simultaneously allowing that to happen resulted in this amazing, again, this birth of this tremendous compassion where I could come forward and be in this position, right, later, of having so much love to offer that there is no one who doesn't feel beautiful and worthy of full unconditional love and benevolence, right? That's a very great oversimplification of what I'm trying to say, but it's the easiest and simplest way I can put it. It's not an experience that it's easy to find words for, really. So that said, rewind back to this morning. So she came flying out, and I said, okay, thank you very much, Marielle Deck. I understand we didn't have that conversation. I'm very willing to have it. I had that look and thought, oh, what a beautiful gift. Thank you. I mean, and I'm rushing through this, and not really, it was very deep. It was very meaningful. And then I went ahead and pulled out the High Priestess and elected her as my significator and went through the first operation. If you're not familiar with the first operation, I can't really help you a whole lot other than to say that Benabel did a video on it about, Benabel Wen did a video about it a couple weeks ago. It is in Holistic Tarot. I'm really excited about it right now and about the way it relates to a lot of other spreads that she has in here. So I have it bookmarked. But, you know, it involves separating your cards out into 4 piles, and then you fish through them to find your significator, right? And when you do, it will fall into one of these 4 piles, okay? So today mine came up in the Cups pile, because this is kind of a deeply, it sounds surprising, it's kind of a deeply emotional issue and possibility. And I thought, okay, I don't have time to take all of the cards from that pile, and you spread them out in a circle. And then the reason that these numbers are on the top is because then you start from here and you count in a particular direction, right? So you go in a particular direction, either clockwise or counterclockwise. That's all very esoteric and decided in the moment based on various factors. And you know, you count 9 cards over, pull out whatever card that is, and kind of leave it in the circle. And then the one that I pulled out was the Ace of Discs, right? And once you do that, it was 11. So I counted back, and it took me right back to the High Priestess. So it was locked, basically. Once that happens and you can't count either direction and get a new card, you have the cards that you're supposed to string together and form a story. So as I did that, and I'm trying to figure this out, so I'm reading, okay, so I need to do this for everybody, I think. If I'm watching this, yes, that's right, it would be right to left. Okay, so yeah, the whole camera thing is always confusing. Any way I look at this, the message coming back to me feels like one of tremendous validation and beauty, right? The Ace of Discs and the High Priestess. You know, the key phrase that I have for the Ace of Discs is perfect manifestation. And this is my birth card. Right. So very, very meaningful. Very, very meaningful and validating. And the truth is, as women, we are embodying both of these archetypes all the time. I think it's mostly about how are we relating to them and what kind of baggage are we carrying around them based on our nature, based on our nurture, based on all of the tangled up things, patterns, beliefs, ideas, cultural baggage, all of those things come into play when you talk about how we embody these archetypes. And I think the most important thing I've learned about it, I realized actually as I was thinking about it, I've actually, you know, having looked back at the Marielle deck, I've done more to figure out how to embody the Empress and to do that with grace than I have to embody my High Priestess. I actually feel like I have a lot more work to do here than I do here. And that's why we love the tarot. Because it just, every time I think I know something about myself or I know something about the deck or about life, if I pick up my decks and start playing and working, they will tell me something that I could never have known as deeply as I will after I work with them. So, yeah, beautiful, beautiful stuff. Had to share the insight. So I think usually these are the videos that get the fewest views because most people want to watch an unboxing, which is so fascinating, but and certainly I'll do plenty of those because there are so many to do. But, for those of you who are actually interested in, the insights and the cards themselves, I thank you deeply for coming and watching and sharing that with me. It's a lot to put yourself out there and just offer it, but I can't do it any other way. It's just not how I function. So thank you for watching and have a beautiful week.